Hey everyone! Welcome to week 16, day 5. This is our last day on our composition week. And for the last day, we saved a movie from one of my favorite directors too, that is actually quite amazing because it's the longest format that we're going to do on this week, the most horizontal format that we're going to do on this week. And it's super nice to try and investigate why and how that format works for the way, again, the story is narrated. So let's do that. Thank you for hanging out with us this week. Bye. Okay, let's get started. For this last video, I thought it'd be cool if we could investigate, if we could study a format that is very seldomly seen in movies. And that is a 2.76 to 1 format. Now, there's been some movies through history that have used this format, and the one I'm picking today to do this compositional study is The Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino. So if I'm being super honest, Hateful Eight is not my favorite Tarantino movie. I'm probably way more of a Reservoir Dogs person, or even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought that was a tremendous movie. I saw that last year, and I thought that was an incredible movie. But because we are studying composition, and we're trying to look at how a movie's format, a movie's aspect ratio, actually has an effect on how the story is told, I thought it was cool if throughout this week we would try to understand that different aspect ratios actually condition the way an image is arranged. Now, we've already seen 2.35 to 1 with Monday's video. We've already done 1.85 to 1, which is more traditional nowadays. And we already did 1.37 to 1, which feels very, very squarish in comparison to the other aspect ratios that we've done. Now, today, there's a huge difference because the image is actually going to feel really, really elongated. It really does feel like an outstretched rectangle. It's quite horizontal. So what we're going to see in this film is actually a ton of real estate, a ton of space in the screen that actually has to be. It really, really has to be activated. And because it is a slower paced Tarantino film, then you can't really have a slow pace with like nothing around. That nothingness worked with the mood and the tone of the Lanthimos movie of Alps. But for Tarantino, no, he actually has to compose every single shot and it has to feel like it's inhabited by something. So some of my favorite sequences from this movie come from obviously the winter landscape and the journey that John Ruth is going through in his carriage through this landscape. First, he picks up Samuel L. Jackson, Major Warren, and this particular shot, this particular sequence is actually the beginning. It's actually the establishing shot of the second chapter, the Son of a Gun chapter, where John Ruth has already picked up Major Warren, and he's about to pick up Chris Mannix. And the truth is, I really could have picked any scene, any sequence with that carriage. I think that the choice of having that carriage, the choice of having those number of horses, the choice of that carriage being a darker shape that is in the midst of this snowstorm, of this snowy terrain, it's full of trees, is actually quite perfect. It actually creates an absolutely wonderful contrast. So I honestly could have picked any of those sequences. I think they're all just absolutely beautiful. They are perfectly composed. But what I loved about this particular scene is that there is a kind of motif at the beginning where there's an introduction of the characters that John Ruth is picking up. They are kind of presented to us, and we have, in this case, just the back of this character because we don't really know who this person is. He's about to learn who he's picking up. So I just love the fact that this figure, the figure that's giving our back to us, which is usually just a way of having the viewer kind of take place of that character. In many ways, that character becomes us. So this is the way we are being presented to this whole environment in the second chapter of the film. And I just love that he is a stranger. Chris Mannix is essentially a stranger right at the beginning. Just a minute later, John Ruth realizes who he is. But he's holding this tiny lamp, this lantern that has this tiny kind of glimmer of hope, because he is essentially just freezing in the snow and he's trying to convince Ruth to pick him up. So that tiny orange, amidst all that coolness and grayness, it's not quite the blueness that we were seeing yesterday with the winter landscape in Grand Budapest. This is more of a very soupy, again, there's a snowstorm. That's why these people are stranded in the snow. And it's just a very, very kind of milky atmosphere. And just the fact that we have this dark shape, again, in this first plane, trying to convince this carriage to pick him up, his hope being kind of symbolized by that gorgeous tiny little flame, I thought was just incredible. I love the fact that everything is activated. The whole horizontal aspect of the image is activated. There's even like a tree trunk on the far left that is kind of pointing at this character. The character has a slight kind of slant to his shoulders. His head is slightly tipped. He's directing his gaze. Again, his hope is in this lantern, but his bigger hope of being rescued is in this horse carriage. And this horse carriage presents itself just deep into this atmosphere just to heighten the fact that there is this very menacing storm, and that perhaps if he were to stay outside, he would probably be dead within hours. So I really like that there is a kind of switch in hierarchy, because the carriage is where our most important characters are, but there's an introduction of this new character right now taking place in the sequence, and he, who is at this moment, again, like an enigma to them, is being presented as this bigger shape. Almost like a more menacing shape, because he is potentially menacing at this point. The fact that his nature is unknown makes him menacing, so he has to be this darker kind of looming shape. His overall presentation has to communicate that, and that's why I think it's absolutely brilliant in that sense. Now, to me, to be completely honest, I feel that this particular shot and this particular composition is incredible in the sense that it is a throwback to old school illustration. Now, what I mean by that is that there is a really, really deep kind of desire to storytell through every single element that is in this image. And because it is a Western, and I think this is the most obvious reason why it is a throwback to old school illustration, our mind just immediately goes to Frederic Remington. We've mentioned Remington, and specifically Remington's night paintings a while ago, but Remington is the king of using horses and carriages and cowboys as just these shapes that are full of narrative power that he activates just masterfully. And my mind immediately went there to those night paintings because he is aware of the coolness, darkness, blueness of those images. And many, many times he pairs that blueness with an orange kind of hint, an orange accent coming from little lamps or campfires. And it's just perfect balance. But like I said, that's immediately where your mind kind of goes to, or it goes to like an N.C. Wyeth, because again, Wyeth is an absolute master in terms of using composition as a storytelling device. So there is a deep awareness, and to speak about an awareness in terms of composition is almost like a moot point, because you have to be. Composition, a good composition, inherently communicates that the person that is in charge of composing, of directing this image, is absolutely aware of primarily the proportions and how to activate those proportions with the story that he or she is wanting to tell. So in my mind, that heightened awareness has always been super prevalent in illustration. And it doesn't have to be early 1900s illustration, which again, Wyeth, Remington are perfect examples of that. Or for example, the very horizontal nature of Dean Cornwell's vignettes. I immediately went for those. And because I was thinking of that horizontal quality, I also remembered 50s, 60s illustration, because there was a need for the illustrators to understand that those illustrations, and specifically those outstretched illustrations, had to have a place in wherever they were going to be printed in order to have then the story, whatever story was going to accompany those illustrations, would be activated by that image, that you would be aware of image and you would also be aware of text. So my mind also immediately went to Kobe Whitmore and Austin Briggs and Al Parker and all these amazing illustrators that were super aware that the way that they could organize an image in terms of the length of that picture plane was also a necessity in so that the text could be activated, that your mind wanted to go to the image, but the image had a conscious quality of text being there. So your mind would always say, okay, the image is important, but it's also letting me know that its format is also guiding me down, so I have to look at this text. And those were brilliant illustrations at the time. Those were very compelling ways of using an image to try and people to get to read, to actually also go for the story. Like I said, when I saw this Tarantino movie, I was actually a little concerned because I remember them making this huge deal about him shooting with an Ultra Panavision 70 with the film weighing like 90 kilograms, and they had to have like special screenings for this movie, and some of the screenings were failures because it was so hard to screen this movie. It was like this physical act to even attempt to screen this movie. And I thought, wow, this is so special. But in my mind, I was like, is this going to look like an ultra-wide gaming monitor? Like, I don't know how many of you guys play video games, but those ultra-wide gaming monitors, they have so much real estate. Again, there's so much space that has to be filled that many times when you're running a game, you're getting all this information on the sort of outskirts on what is supposed to be the moment of the image that you're supposed to be focusing on. So in these ultra-wide monitors, it becomes, yes, information, but it's information that you feel it's kind of been added to something that was more concise, more compact, more important. So my concern was always if that was going to happen in a lot of the sequences. But like I said, especially the sequences that take place outdoors are absolutely fantastic. I think that's where the cinematography just shines through. Those vistas are just tremendous to look at. They are traversed literally by the carriage. So that's why the carriage is actually such an important character, especially in the first part of this film, because it is the one that's taking you through that really long plane of the image. That's why I found it almost impossible not to reference the horse carriage. With the interior shots, and that's where the movie has its kind of dialogue-heavy moments, I really do feel that those are not as active as the outdoor shots. But that's just me. That's just my taste. So I really do think that the experience of this composition, of having chosen this ultra-wide 2.76 to 1 aspect ratio just elegantly is presented again by these outdoor shots. You know, when Tarantino was asked why this ratio, he was referring to great historic movies like Ben-Hur, but those are like epic movies. And I wouldn't really say that this is a Tarantino epic movie. Again, that's just my taste. That's just me. I just think the pacing of this movie is quite different from other movies. I even have a sense of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feeling way more like an epic. That I think this one is actually quite more intimate because most of the sequences are either indoors or have to do with this horse carriage ride. So it's very simple in many ways. So like I said, the purpose of this week was to try and see how the decision of choosing a very specific format can affect the way we tell a story. And I think it was very important to try and tick not all of the boxes. These are 5 days for a theme. These are 5 paintings, trying to not show the totality of the possibilities that are at hand, but to show 5 choices that we can make but it's also an invitation for all of you to activate this exercise. All you have to do is just pick your favorite movies and just be conscious about the dimensions of those compositions, the color choices, the value choices, the way the shapes are being presented to you, and how those shapes are being presented to you in the context of the story. That's why I've been trying to, without spoilers, because like I said, I don't want to speak too much about the movies. I want to try and contextualize the image in the sense of when it appears during the movie. But we have to be conscious of the mood that the image is actually being constructed upon and what it's trying to communicate in order to understand why those choices were taken. And that's why I think it was super important for me to land this movie on the artist that I probably love the most, me being an illustrator at heart. I've already said that many, many times. And anytime my mind can make connections with Remington or N.C. Wyeth or Dean Cornwell, then I am absolutely happy to do so. So that was it for today. I was really glad that I could I could end this week on an image that for me is just an exciting throwback to everything that I like. I think the reaction to this week has been super cool, and a lot of people have been giving me really, really awesome considerations for other movies. Oof, this exercise could last a lifetime if we wanted to, and it's honestly super enjoyable because we are watching like super cool movies and trying to learn from them. So what's not to love about it? So maybe if you guys are interested, we can do a second week of compositions from my favorite movies in the future. So just let me know if you would want that. Super happy that you guys were able to hang out with us during this week. Remember, next week, a whole new theme. I'm going to try to build up from this week. So I'm going to use some of the elements that we did this week and try to put them to use during next week. It's going to be a whole new thing. It's going to be a totally different thing. But I'm going to see if I could just sprinkle some of the things that we learned from this week onto next week. And that way we can also feel like we are constructing something and we can build upon, you know, the things that we've learned week after week. So thank you for letting us be your company as always. I always tell this at the end of the week. That makes us super happy. So thank you, and we'll see you guys next week then. Bye. Take care.